I've stood here before with this group, either here or one of the lounges in the past. This really is a beautiful mansion that is a great dedication to our state's history, built in 1871. Claudia and I are really proud to be able to host events and people in the mansion, just as the Parsons did, because I really believe this is an important piece of history to keep alive for all of our state to see. Peggy mentioned my wife Claudia. She has been by my side for, I don't know, 36 years? Almost 36 years, she tells me. It's the day's not over yet. Good end. But Claudia traveled with me extensively, has really raised our kids while I worked at the business all the time, as you just heard Peggy talk about. So I wouldn't be here without her, and I'd like you to help me welcome Missouri's newest First Lady. So as Peggy said, and there's people in here, Rudy and others that will fall asleep. That you've heard my story so many times, but it's really been a humbling journey coming from North St. Louis City, working to try to just actually get by and help our mom, pay the bills. To be standing in front of you today. It's every day it seems like it's just amazing. And I met some fantastic young people in the back of the room. By the way, next year, young people, you should say you want to be in the front of the room. And so you meet young folks, and we do in the Capitol all day long as we travel the state, and you really have optimism for them, because that's what I hope to do, if nothing else, is to try to make sure we continue to create an environment where whatever your goal is in life, that you can get there. And certainly there were barriers that I had going through life. Some of them I created myself. But those, we really live in a state and a country where I think it seems to me I'm somewhat living proof that you can get through anything you want to get through. And so running for office was nothing really I ever had in my mind. Carl Vogel was a senator here, and many of you knew him, I know, for multiple years, and we thought the Jefferson City community came to me as the farmer chamber chairman and said, hey, we could use a businessman in the Missouri Senate. And so that's the reason really I went into the Senate. I had been serving as a highway commissioner. I think the very first interview I ever did as a highway commissioner was with young Dave Leap here, maybe possibly. And that was my first experience with the press, Dave. It didn't go real well. Just kidding. And so I went into the Senate with that in mind, talk about transportation, talk about economic development, and try to make that kind of why I served in the Senate. It was why I served in the Senate. Never thinking I'd be lieutenant governor until, as everybody in this room, I'm sure, remembers how Governor Parson became governor. And he asked me to be his lieutenant governor, and he'll tell you the story, Claudia will tell you the story. My first answer was no. I'm term limited out now, Mike. I'm done with this rodeo. And he said, no, I really want somebody who, A, really doesn't want the job, and I thought, well, that's kind of weird, and B, that I know that I can work with. And so probably since the first time that Peter Kinder and Matt Blunt were in office together, I believe, even though we didn't always agree, pretty much had a functioning governor and lieutenant governor since the Parson administration had been here. Obviously, when his term limits became obvious that he was not going to be able to run again, and the triggering event many people in this room reported on when Roy Blunt decided not to run for Senate, multiple people wanted to know, well, what are you going to do? And so that's when Claudia and I and our family got together and said maybe running for governor, continuing to create that environment for people to succeed would be a path that might work for us. Claudia and I are the parents of 4 children, and we are incredible believers in the miracle of life, but we found out a bigger miracle happens when the 4th one moves out of the house with a job. And so we got to that point several years ago, thank goodness. And so it enabled us to travel the state. And the greatest thing about running for office is the people that you meet. We not only know people in different corners of the state, we now have like best friends in different parts of the state, from Kent, Missouri to Pineville to, Maryville to you name it, Memphis, Bible Grove, Missouri, some really good friends of ours up in Northeast Missouri. And that's been worth its weight in gold. Tiring, yes, a lot of days and miles on the road, yes. But we're also able to do our official duties. You can ask any veterans organization that you want around the state. We really made sure that was the priority as lieutenant governor, to take care of our state's heroes. Missouri ranks 6th, depending on which day you look at it, in veterans at about 470,000. So we really wanted to make sure we paid a lot of attention to veterans organizations, veterans causes, veterans activities. We worked on that a lot. Peggy mentioned tourism. Tourism is near and dear to my heart. 300,000 Missourians have a job directly with the tourism industry. This last year, about a $19 billion impact on our state's economy. So we really feel like showcasing the state and making sure we let people know what there is to do in Missouri is great. You know, Missouri is only one of 7 states that our state parks are still free. Now, if you want to camp there or something, you have to pay, but just to get into the park, other states charge just to walk in. And so I think that's a great asset that we love promoting. And then our small business piece, which is what I'm best at. I'm not as good a politician, I think, some days as a businessman, but promoting the Buy Missouri program, which many people in this room, by the way, thank you for helping us cover all of the different Buy Missouri activities we did, not just the Buy Missouri week in October, but throughout the year. Many markets, as I talked to you, especially in the smaller market, rural papers, would come out and cover those Buy Missouri visits. And it really meant a lot to the people who own those businesses. And then it's amazing the people in Missouri who don't know what is made in their own backyard. And so we worked a lot on Buy Missouri. So that was something that was very much important to us. And then I would try to work with Governor Parson on different things. When he was busy out of town, we would help cover when he was gone. He actually sent us on a trade mission to Germany about 1.5 years ago that was an incredible opportunity. One of those companies that was not here has now moved here into St. Louis, and others we're still working on. So I love selling the state, whether it's for tourism or economic development. I love selling the work ethic that we have here in Missouri. I have now met governors and had met lieutenant governors from all over the United States. And Missouri is really a place with a rock solid attitude of people that really want to go to work. And we want to be able to provide those opportunities for them. And that's why, in essence, I'm here. Peggy mentioned the 4 pillars that we're running on, and y'all have heard it. We've been talking about it for 18 months. Public safety, making our neighborhoods safe, we think is the foundation to anything else that happens after that. You can talk about economic development, you can talk about education, you can talk about agriculture, or any one of the issues that you'll hear before the building. Most of those issues don't get traction until we have safe communities. So that's very, very important to me. My father left when I was 1 year old, and he was a St. Louis City policeman. His beat cop partner for 10 years was Dave Sinclair, who was ultimately the guy who ended up raising me. But when my dad left, it was the police and fire community, because if you were an Irish immigrant in North St. Louis, every relative was a policeman or fireman, period. Those are the people who came to our house with clothes, with food, with resources for my mom to help raise a family. And so I have, a long time affinity for public safety. And I just believe that we need to have the backs of the men and ladies who protect our communities and make neighborhoods to where employers want to feel safe, their employees are safe, and their customers are safe. That's really important to me. Agriculture, Claudia and I are first generation farmers, so a little over 40 years in the cow-calf business down in Phelps County. It's really important to me. I tell people all the time, I learned more from the lessons of being in agriculture than I did in any other business or opportunity or experience in my life. Because in agriculture, when you have a problem, you don't get to have a meeting, you don't get to call people and say, hey, let's talk next week about how to fix the fence that's broken, the cows are, you have to fix it right now. It doesn't matter what time of day it is, doesn't matter what the conditions or the weather is. When you have an issue in agriculture, you fix it then, and that really taught me about tenacity and problem solving, and we love our agricultural background. Economic development, as I already mentioned, being able to sell the state's important to me. Regulatory reform is very important to me. I want to keep companies and employees safe, but I also want to make sure we don't have unnecessary burdens on those folks. And then educational opportunities. Passing Senate Bill 727 I thought was a good step forward in some choice issues that we had last year. But most importantly, what I'd love to use my position to work with is career and technical education. Now, we have some of the best 4-year college and universities anywhere in the state, here in the state of Missouri. And I'm a massive supporter of higher education, but the reality is 60% of Missourians do not go through a 4-year college. So being able to make sure we have opportunities for those men and women to get that workforce development component right, get the training that they need, and be able to get employable skills as they come out of whatever level of education they want to come out of, is really important to me as well. So those are the things that we'll very much work on, and that's what I'm working with the legislature on. Every day I have made it, and I will make it, a priority to walk the halls, go into offices of House and Senate members, Democrats, Republicans, freshmen, people who've been there for a while, doesn't matter. I just walk in and say, what's going on? So after they get over the shock, because the governor's never walked in their office before, we usually have some pretty fun conversations. And it's usually lighthearted. They're not that they're not serious about the job or what they want to do, they are. But it's more, I'm a relationship people. I told several people as we walked through the tables before we talked that, and you guys who have been around me a long time know I'm a relationship person. That doesn't mean I always agree with you, by the way, whether it's the press or a member of the House, Senate, Democrat or Republican. But at the end of the day, I think life is best when you try to figure out a way to get along with people. That's not easy, but that's my style, and that's what I'll continue to do. I meet with Cindy O'Laughlin and John Patterson. By the way, I'm fans of both of those people. They're very different personalities. They come from very different backgrounds and population centers, but really good people that I'm excited to work with. And I've met with them once a week since I've been here and once a week since before I came in. And I met with all of their leadership team in our office yesterday to talk about our State of the State speech, which will be next Tuesday at 3. So, relationships are who I am. It sometimes can bite you, as you all know, I'm sure, well, all too well. But we're going to continue to try to build on those. So, with that, I'm sure you've heard enough from me, and we would love to hear what's on your mind. And any tough questions are going to go to Claudia. She loves the press and speaking in public. So, anyway, who's first? If you just put your hand up, that'd be easiest for me to try to grab somebody. Kurt?
So can you give us a State of the State preview? What's one thing in the State of the State that we're not going to cover enough? And if you told us now, we might give it more.
That's a good way to put it. Yes. Kurt, by the way, is a big supporter of our state parks and tourism, so thank you for that. We're going to talk about the 4 things I just covered, plenty. And I know, we'll, highlight some, as most state of the states do, we'll highlight some people affected in each of those areas. Obviously the state of the state is when the governor rolls out their budget. That was a little bit tougher for us this year because its budgets start getting developed, as you all know, in kind of August and September timeframe, and all of a sudden we're the second week in November trying to figure this out. Our budget's going to be a little tighter this year, and I think it's going to be even more tighter next year and the year after. Most of that is due to the federal, decreasing money flow that we saw highs in COVID and after COVID. And so making sure we make those decisions to fund essential services, but also recognize we have a balanced budget amendment is something that's going to probably be the biggest challenge that we have for the next couple of years, but we'll get through it. Revenues are growing, so we think that's a good thing. We want to keep the economy. I'm optimistic with the new leadership in Washington, D.C., that revenues may grow even more than what our consensus revenue estimates were. And, we're not going to plan that way. We're going to plan conservatively, but we'll continue to monitor the budget. Summer?
How are you trying to manage both a tightened budget likely for the upcoming fiscal year, but also your priorities for tax cuts? Is there going to be enough money for that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. A lot of people ask, if you want to eliminate the income tax, how do you deal with that in a tight budget year? I've said every time I've talked about that particular piece, and by the way, there's a capital gains tax piece, there's several different tax bills moving through the legislature. That none of the big picture ones, especially the income tax, which is the biggest, can be a light switch. It's got to be something that's responsible, that funds essential services, but ultimately has an end goal. And in the economic development world, even if it takes a matter of years to get to a certain position, as long as you can look an employer or manufacturer who's thinking about expanding here, moving the management here, and tell them here's what your end goal is and here's where you think you can get to, that's a good conversation for us to be able to have. So it will be a balance. It will not be easy. But it's still something we're very committed to continue to work on.
And then do you support budget limits in the Constitution as some of the those HJRs, JR's proposed this year have, suggested?
Yeah, there's different ones that have been filed, to be honest with you, so, there's multiple different plans out there on how that might be able to work, so there's some I'll probably like a little bit more than others. Let me go back, oh, Kermit's here.
Governor, to follow up on
You're not
something,
gonna-
what would you consider a success this year with regard to taxes?
I would think a minimum of success would be to put in what we call the Senate Bill 509 triggers, which, as you know, that has a stop to it right now from that bill from, I think Eric Schmidt might have sponsored that way back. To continue to have a responsible trigger when there's revenue growth, I believe it's 150 million cuts a tenth of a point, that we would continue those and at least take that floor off. And to be honest with you, I also think we'd have success if we could get rid of the capital gains tax.
Is there a target figure for the tax rate
0.
this year?
No, I don't have a target this year for the tax rate. Dave, I avoided, I'm sorry.
Sure. A public safety question. One of the first executive orders you signed directed the Department of Public Safety and the Highway Patrol to participate in the 1357G program, essentially to cooperate and get trained to help ICE. Missouri had a law in 2008 that said, subject to appropriations, the Highway Patrol was supposed to do that. So what made your executive order necessary? Was the patrol not already doing this?
There was a mechanism that didn't allow that. I'm gonna use the word allow, that might not be the right word, but there was something that needed to be clarified in order for them to move forward. As you know, immigration is one of the biggest issues plaguing our country and our state. It's estimated that Missouri has over 70,000 undocumented or illegal immigrants here. Being able to take the right steps when law enforcement encounters them is very important to law enforcement. They feel like they don't have the tools to do that right now.
So the patrol wasn't actually carrying out that 2008 law at the
There
moment?
was a mechanism that didn't allow them to go forward with that. That's what I understand. Yes, ma'am.
Hannah Sparrow from the Odessa. When you were Lieutenant Governor, you, Representative Thompson, and I stood out on the side of the road and looked at the Odessa interchange. And that project, at the time, had STIP money, and now with the STIP money, is being rolled into the I-70 widening project, and so it's in the process of going out for design build. We talked a lot about the concerns with that interchange in particular. With the design build process, we've got concerns as a community about our ability to weigh in on what that design is. Do you have confidence in the ability of that process to meet the needs?
I'm a huge fan of design build on the Highway Commission. When I was on it, we did the first 2 design build projects. 40 if you're an old timer from St. Louis, but 4064 in St. Louis, and the bridge, the Kitmon Bridge up in Kansas City were both design build. We had several bridge projects in rural communities across the state that were design build. I think the community will be very satisfied, and actually I think they'll be above expectations on your ability to input in the design build process. That's an important interchange too, by the way, very important. And back around the corner.
Yeah, I heard President Trump plans to send about 10,000 troops to the border. Do you know if any of those are going to be from Missouri?
We haven't had that notification yet. I will keep, as you know, our current Adjutant General is got a great promotion to go to Germany. And we have a new nominee, General Hausman, that will be coming in. I'm meeting with those 2 actually tonight, and I'll find out more. But to my knowledge, and if it happened, they haven't told me yet, it could be an issue, but to my knowledge, as of right now, it hasn't asked for us to participate in that. Yes, sir, in the back, behind Kermit.
Yeah, do you expect the state to come up with a plan, a stadium funding plan for the Chiefs and Royals? Like, where do those negotiations stand right now?
There was 0 chance I was getting through this without Chief. Let me say this. I'm going to say a couple things. I have talked to the ownership groups of both teams very much, and Governor Parson, to his credit, also had these conversations. I've had conversations with the political leaders in those areas that have to do with that. I look at the Chiefs and Royals differently than some other people. Other people want to look at it because they have NFL or MLB on the back of their names. I look at it as economic opportunity. If we had a widget manufacturer in Kansas City, Missouri that said we're going to move to some other state, whether it be Kansas or Tennessee or whatever, we would all be dropping everything we could to say, how do we save the economic impact this business makes to the state of Missouri? That's the same way we have to look at the chiefs and royals. It has to be, number one, it has to be a good investment for taxpayers. I'm not a fan of just throwing money at things. I'm not a fan of just throwing money at stadiums. But I am a fan of keeping the economic activity that those two teams provide. And we're gonna continue to work and put our best foot forward to make sure they stay in Missouri.
Were you disappointed that you came in the previous administration did not come up with some kind of plan?
The previous administration had plenty going on when we came in. So, but economic development things, I don't want the media to get mad about this. Whenever some plan actually evolves that works for economic development, it's transparent and it's made very much available to the press and to the public. But when you're dealing with a business deal, sometimes you have to have a kind of a negotiation and conversation until that's ready to come forward. And then all the details come out, and they should come out. But when you're dealing with a business deal, you can't just put it on the billboard every day on what step of that process you're in. There's too much going on. You're telling the competition what you're doing, which is always a bad idea. And so you have to kind of have these conversations. I will tell you, Governor Parsons' administration did a very good job of trying to make sure we're keeping those conversations going. Yes, ma'am.
I want to ask, your conversations with Cindy and Patterson that you're having weekly, Cindy told me that some of them have to do with Amendment 3 and repealing or figuring out what's next there. Have you had those conversations? And if so, what is it about? What do you think can be done about Amendment 3? Will we hear anything about it next week in the State of the State?
First of all, we have a scheduled meeting every week, but Cindy calls me 5 or 6 times a day when I love her. And seriously, in walking the halls, I try to at least walk by Cindy or John's office every day just to say hello and see what's going on, because you can meet weekly, but as you know, a lot of things happen throughout the day. You will hear a little bit about protecting life in our, not a little bit about it, you'll hear a lot about our belief in that we should protect innocent life. We said through the campaign, if Amendment 3 were to pass, which we were very much 100% against, that we were going to put our hand on the Bible and we would protect the Constitution. But we're going to always look for ways to protect innocent life. And there's several different ideas that are churning and have been filed through the legislature. I'm sure you've all seen them. And we will support any bill that we think is constitutionally right, that also gives the ability for Missourians to continue to protect innocent life. But I want to say the big piece that I want to make sure we concentrate on is we have this resource across the state called Pregnancy Resource Centers that Claudia and I have been involved personally with several of them. And we want to make sure that people don't forget that we have that resource out there, and that we need to make sure we highlight the work they do to make sure women know what all options they have available to them. And I think that's equally as important, that we continue to focus on what our Pregnancy Resource Centers do.
I think we have time for one more.
This young lady right here has been very persistent.
Echo Menges, the Edina Sentinel. I'm going to flip back over to public safety. In the northeast corner of the state, one of the most rural, we have a lot of problems with retaining and attracting county prosecutors, and also paying law enforcement as far as the base pay for example, sheriff's deputies they're grossly underpaid. So coming into this office, do you have any plans to help address that, or use the weight of the governor's office to push for something better for rural communities who can't attract or retain a prosecutor and doesn't have the budget to pay law enforcement closer to what they need to be making?
Yeah, so the question is, if you didn't hear back, is basically compensation for smaller communities that don't have a large budget to pay either prosecutors or sheriff department deputies. The answer is yes. We're still working on a couple of details for prosecutors' plans, but we have a recruitment and retention piece we'll be talking about at the State of the State for law enforcement. That would be for any post-certified, active post-certified. We have post-certified people that are retired, so active post-certified men and lady across the state. We're working very much, our crime plan was developed by members of the Sheriff's Association, the Police Chiefs Association, state troopers, multiple law enforcement associations, and Attorney General Andrew Bailey. to make sure that we actually had stakeholders helping us develop what would help in more of a rural setting, what would help in more of an urban setting. Because in Missouri, just like most of our problems, one brush doesn't paint all pictures, right? And so you have to have some plans that will work better in some areas than other. And I think that our Safer Missouri package will help some of our rural communities the most. One more, I think, Gabby said, sorry. Rudy, we can't go without Rudy. Can we go without having Rudy? Nate Leap says, call on Rudy.
Deaths in Missouri prisons are at an all-time high. Complaints about the medical care available in the prisons are flooding in. And there's legislation that would create an oversight committee similar to one that was existed a number of years ago that the legislature ran. Do you think that do you want an oversight commission to help with the Department of Corrections and its issues, or what is your plan to address it?
Yeah, if you guys want to, and I'm aware of some of those reports, Rudy, if you want to, or had any reports on the prayer breakfast last week, we had a national corrections expert, I would call him, named Josh Smith, who actually spent time in federal prison. And even though you're hearing some reports about some of the things Rudy pointed out, overall, Missouri's correction system is literally nationally recognized for what it's done. And I'm a huge fan of our Director Foley there, that he has some always constantly trying to make the environment and the conditions better. But I believe he has it on the right path right now. And I'm not sure creating additional bureaucracy to do that, although I understand you want safety and oversight, not just for the prisoners, but most importantly for our great corrections officers, which run into some pretty rough times, as you can imagine. I would go with Commissioner Foley, Director Foley. He has done a fabulous job, and I think he's got things in the right direction. We appreciate the opportunity. Welcome again to the People's House. I'm so glad we could be here today. And I'm just going to end with just a kind of a statement. I've said it throughout when I was talking about why we got here. I'm very much a relationship person. And I have members of the press ask me all the time, you know, what's the best way? We have press conferences, we do this, we do that. I'm not a great gotcha guy. I'm a person that wants to know, the reporters in here that I've known for years know that about me. And so I would tell you, any political official that you're dealing with, whether it's a city council level or state representative, state senator, try to understand who he or she is before you all of a sudden think that you might have something that might be a sensational headline, because there's usually more to a person than just the latest thing you heard in the halls of the Capitol or read on social media. And that's not advice, that's just the way I operate. And I appreciate if you would think about that for all of our elected officials going forward. It's not an easy job at any level of government, no matter what level you're in. And so just know that. We want to be transparent. The people I know want to be transparent, they want to do the right thing. And I'm sure we'll have a good relationship for the next 4 years. So thank you so much for being here. God bless each and every one of you.
And thank you, Governor Kehoe and Claudia. Thanks for inviting us into your home. We appreciate it. The People's House. And thank you all for being here today. This is the end of our program, so thank you for being part of it, and enjoy your drive home.